This is a Louie T Network exclusive.
Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Draft zone.
Who else could it be? For me, you're me, Louie T. Welcome, you are in the lab room. Of course, I'm your host, Luke. Thank you for joining me on the 2016 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man, Louie T, aims to break down all 32 teams in the Football League's 2016 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale, single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out. And I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so, we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in said team's draft. Apply bonuses when necessary. Add those scores up, get an aggregate, divide by the number of picks, which will then yield us an overall final grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, is in total control, as this is the up format, the you pick format in full effect. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Now, we are more than halfway through this series, so make sure you're careful on what team you ask to be next. And make sure, because I caught one of y'all slipping the other day, make sure you put the phrase next in your comment. There was a fan that wanted to see the Seahawks next, just put Seattle Seahawks, didn't put next. Now, he just happened to be second, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but had he been first, that would have been really, really disappointing to see him get his team up, but not be able to be first and have the components necessary. So make sure you're doing your due diligence here. But that being said, this is an easy process. Don't make this harder than what it is, folks. It is simple. So with that being said, the next team picked in the series by you, the viewers, is the Philadelphia Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. A lot of things have changed in Philadelphia since the last time we seen those boys take the field. The chipster is out. In comes new head coach Doug Peterson. No more chipster to make some of your decisions in terms of personnel. So now you have someone else doing that as well. So this was a different draft for the Eagles, and a lot of people have mocked the Eagles for not only this draft, but this offseason and some of the moves they've made. It seems like they went out and stockpiled this team full of quarterbacks, and they're paying them some good money as well. So there are a lot of questions, not a lot of answers right now in Philadelphia. We'll have to see how things shake out. Got rid of DeMarco Murray. It's a big change in Philadelphia right now. Let's talk about this Eagles draft, and a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was an okay draft. I didn't think it was a great draft, and I'll tell you why as we jump into the 2016 NFL draft of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, first round, second pick overall, North Dakota State quarterback Carson Wentz is the selection. Anytime, and this is how I feel, anytime you have a draft where you feel like you got the future of your franchise at the quarterback position, it's a success to me. Now, again, we won't know how successful this draft is, or any draft for that matter, is until probably 3 or 4 years down the line when you can actually look back and see how these picks turned out. But one thing's for certain, when you don't have that guy in place, and the Eagles obviously don't feel like Sam Bradford is that guy, probably don't feel like Chase Daniel is that guy either, and that's why they felt the need to go out and get Carson Wentz. You feel good about yourself because you say, look, we won't have to do this again for the next 10 years. We won't have to do this again for the next 12 years. If you look at the teams who have been routinely winning in this league, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they drafted Ben Roethlisberger, haven't had to do it since. The New York Giants, even though they don't make the playoffs very often, when they do, it seems like they win the Super Bowl. They drafted Eli Manning. They haven't had to do it since. You look at the San Diego Chargers, they haven't had to do it since they got Phillip Rivers. You look at the Green Bay Packers, so forth and so forth. The teams that are winning in this league, they get it right once and they don't have to worry about the most important position on the field. And if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, the rest of this draft may or may not pan out for you, but if this particular pick does, you don't have to worry about that position, the most important position, not just in the National Football League, but in professional sports any longer. And that should be reassuring to Eagles fans out there if this kid is what we think he can become, because I think he's the most talented quarterback in this draft class, and I think over time he will prove that to be the case. We'll see. Everybody loves the upside of a guy like Paxton Lynch, but to me his upside, and I'm speaking of now Carson Wentz, is just as great, if not greater, than that of Paxton Lynch. So I love Carson Wentz. I thought he was the most talented quarterback in this draft class. If you're talking about size, athleticism, arm talent, he played in a pro-style offense at North Dakota State. The guy's a winner. The only question you really have is, can he stay healthy? Dealt with some injuries in high school, dealt with some more injuries at the collegiate level. So that's the only thing you really question with him, because mentally he gets it, athletically he has it, size, everything. I think the poise that this guy possesses, watching him on tape and in some really clutch, pressure-packed situations, he went out and performed at a high level. You gotta feel good about this kid. And so the only question that I have is, can the Eagles resist the temptation if this team is struggling? If they're 5-9 and the playoffs are out of sight, can they resist the temptation of putting this guy in? Just let him sit for an entire year. Allow Sam Bradford, Chase Daniel, whomever to carry this team this season, and let this guy have a full year a la Carson Palmer. And we haven't seen a quarterback sit down for an entire year, probably since Carson Palmer. It'd be nice if this kid could sit down. The Jaguars had that same idea for Blake Bortles. It didn't work out that way, but Blake Bortles has turned out fine. We'll see what happens. Either way, in the first round, second overall pick, North Dakota State quarterback Carson Wentz is hit high. He's hit deep. Out of here. It's a home run for the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round. You get your quarterback of the future, and you're hoping that you hit a home run on this one, and you don't have to worry about this position for the next decade plus if you are the Philadelphia Eagles, if this one goes as planned. Go to the third round, 79th overall selection, Oregon State offensive lineman Isaac Seumalo is the selection. 6'4", 303 pounds. This was the guy that jumped on my radar at the combine. I thought he moved very well throughout the combine, and I was impressed with his athleticism. And so watching the tape, I was thoroughly pleased with what I saw. A good length, 33-inch arms. This is a guy that is Pam Mom, and I talk about this all the time. Proficient at many, master of none. So this is a situation where this guy has tremendous versatility. He's played 4 out of the 5 offensive line positions at Oregon State. Left tackle, right guard, and center, with the only position he hasn't played being left guard. And so this is a guy that I feel like if you could play right guard, you can play left guard. So he can pretty much play all 5 positions on your offensive line. That's the kind of versatility that's going to get you selected and have you stick on a football team. The only thing I say is that he's not great at any one of these positions. He's good at all of them, not great at any of them. So hence the moniker proficient at many, master of none. I will say this much. I think his best position when it's all said and done is going to be center, because I think he's a guy that can excel at that position, do a really good job. And I'll talk about some of the traits that makes me think that he can excel at center more so than guard or even tackle. Engages and sustains very well. I talk about this with offensive line all the time, that the fact that you need to be able to not only engage a defensive player, but you stay engaged, okay? Sustain that, because a lot of times if you allow a defensive player to disengage from you, they're able to make the play or be around the football. I always talk about good things happen to those who are around the football, where if you're blocking your guy, you're not having to worry about him being around the football, because he's not going to be making a tackle or hanging around, and if the ball is fumbled, he won't be able to recover, things of that nature. Holding on to your block, sustaining your block is big, and this guy does that. Climbs to the second level with ease. Remember that athleticism I talked about that I saw at the combine? When you see it on tape, he's a guy that can get to the second level with ease. Again, another one of those traits you need to have if you're going to play in the interior of the offensive line. You want your offensive lineman to be great on the double team and have the ability to get off the double team and get to the second level, climb to that second level, get to a defensive player and engage that player and sustain a block long enough so that your running back or whomever has the football can take full advantage of that block at the second level. He walls off defenders. He's not a guy that's going to move defenders per se. He's not erasing the line of scrimmage and creating a new one. But what he does do is he does do a good job of getting in the way of that defender and putting a barrier up between the ball carrier and that defender. So he does a really good job of walling off defenders and allowing ball carriers to get up the field. Above average athleticism, I talked about that already. This is a guy that I feel like moves pretty well for a 300-pound offensive lineman. So that's something that I was intrigued about. I told you I really started to notice him at the combine, and I think he did some good things at the combine, which allowed him to get selected here in the 3rd round. Head on a swivel, and this is why I think one of the reasons I talked about him getting to the 2nd level with ease. I talked about him doing a really good job of engaging and sustaining blocks. He has his head on a swivel, and it seemed like even though he was at guard a lot of the times when I watched him, he didn't have a lot of people to block. He wasn't always with a man head up over him. He didn't have a guy engaging him. So he did a really good job. You could tell he played center before because he did a really good job of arms extended, head on a swivel, looking around to see if there's anybody that I need to take care of, if anybody's struggling and I need to go help them double team somebody in the passing game. So he does a really good job of keeping his head on a swivel, looking around to see who needs help and going and addressing that situation. So I think that's something that he does really well that I see a lot from centers, not necessarily guards as much, but from centers. And I think that's something that's kind of innate in him, which I think is one of the reasons why I feel like he can be a really good center. That and some of the things that he does really well, his movement skills probably tops the list of things that make me think he should be inside as a center at the next level. His cons: awareness of blitz pickup, and that's usually something you don't want to associate with your center, because the center needs to be the brains of the operation up front along the offensive line. He needs to be calling out the protection. He needs to be identifying who's coming from where, along with the quarterback to set up protection. So sometimes I felt like he wasn't as aware of where the blitz was coming from pre-snap, and so guys would be able to run by him and create early pressure on the quarterback that probably shouldn't have been there. I mean, you're blocking a guy, you've got a free arm because you're helping double team with the center, and you got a free arm here, and there's a blitzer coming. You probably should be able to get over here, even if it's just a little bit of a chuck or a shoulder or something like that, to slow down a blitzer. At least he's not a free runner now. That extra second that you give the quarterback may be all he needs to get the football off. Whereas if you just allow that guy to come with a 7-yard head start, full head of steam, and you don't touch him at all, and you don't destroy that path, or at least get in the way and alter that path at all, he's getting a free run from 7 yards away. He's probably going to get to the quarterback and affect the play. And I saw that happen a couple of times where he had a chance to really kind of mess up the blitzing pattern of some of these defenders, and he just didn't touch them. And I don't even know if he knew they were coming until it was too late. So I'd love to see him be a little bit more aware of what's going on around him, especially when you're talking about blitzing safeties and linebackers and things of that nature. Second level wanderer. I don't really want to beat him up for this because sometimes there's just no one to block. When you get to the second level, you run out there in space and you look around like, damn, where'd everybody go? There are a couple of times where I felt like, okay, you can go get someone, and they just weren't close enough to him, and he didn't feel like going and trying to go contact them. I get it, but I want guys that when they get to the second level, they're going to find contact. They're looking for work. All right, I'm here. I might as well do. It's almost like when I go to the gym. All right, I may not feel like working out, but once I go to the gym, I'm here. I might as well work out while I'm here. I mean, you're not gonna just stand around and watch other people work out when you get to the gym. I'm here. I might as well work out. You're at the second level. You might as well block somebody. You're there. You did the hard work already, which was get the double team. Now you're in the second level. You might as well block somebody while you're there. Don't wander around the second level and do nothing. And I saw him do that at least 4 or 5 times on tape, which is way too many times for my liking. And the final con is in 2013, he broke his foot and required multiple surgeries to repair his foot. So again, when you're talking about 300 pounders, when you talk about big guys, you hate to hear any kind of foot problems because those usually linger and they usually become bigger issues down the road. So that's something just to keep in the back of your mind. He's played 2 consecutive seasons without any issues there, so you're hoping that that's a trend and not something that comes back to bite him down the road. But in the 3rd round, 79th overall selection, Oregon State offensive lineman Isaac Seumalo for me is a double. I didn't see any traits that stood out. I think the one thing that really does him some good and some justice is the fact that he's so versatile that if the Eagles needed him, they could put him at either guard position or center. I don't see him playing tackle at all at the next level. I think he's an interior offensive lineman. I think, again, like I said before, his best position probably will be center. We'll see what the Eagles decide to do with him. But fact of the matter is, I just don't see him standing out at all. I just see this guy's a really solid offensive lineman that can plug a bunch of different holes for you along your offensive line, and we'll see what happens with Isaac Seumalo. You go to the 5th round, 153rd pick. West Virginia running back Wendell Smallwood is the selection. 5'8", 210 pounds. I understand why the rumors came out that Darren Sproles, Mighty Mike, was looking for a trade. When you draft a guy that looks similar to Darren Sproles, it makes a lot of sense. But I think Darren Sproles is still a very viable back in this league. Even at 32 or whatever he is, he's still a guy that I think can get it done at a really high level. And he said that those rumors weren't true, that he just wants a new deal. It has nothing to do with him possibly being traded or being on the trading block or what may have you. But this is a guy that I think can come in and over time will probably take the role of Darren Sproles on this football team. Has the holy trinity of the running back position, and you know what that is for me: vision, balance, and feet. He has all 3. Now, I will say this, they're not dynamic. His vision, balance, and feet aren't dynamic. He just has it. You can tell that he has a nice feel for the running back position, knows how to press a hole, knows when to cut it back, has a little bit of wiggle on him in terms of agility. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he does have some good balanced vision and feet. Doesn't fall when he cuts back, doesn't stumble, does a really good job of maintaining his balance. So he has the holy running back trinity, and that's vision, balance, and feet. Decisive cuts with good explosion through the hole. That's something that really stood out to me. When he makes up his mind to go, sticks his foot in the ground, it's usually decisive. It's up the field in a hurry, and that's how he makes a lot of his yardage. When he gets into a hole, sticks his foot in the ground, makes a decisive cut, he explodes through that hole. And that's when you see the speed, because this guy does possess a little bit of a burst and does have some speed on him. So you see that on tape watching him in some of these games where he sticks his foot in the ground, makes a decisive cut, gets up the field. You see that burst. Versatility here with pass catching ability. This is a guy that not only ran the football, but also caught it at West Virginia too. And at 5'8", 210, you're going to need to do a little bit of that if you're going to stick in the National Football League. So I think that's something that is beneficial to Wendell Smallwood as well, is that he can catch the football, and he's a reliable pass catcher out of the backfield. Good speed, 4.47 speed for Wendell Smallwood. So again, you're getting a guy that can pick him up and put him down. Anytime you're talking about a guy that could potentially be a 3rd down back or a change of pace back, you need to have that ability to take it the distance. And I think if given the opportunity, I think Wendell Smallwood can do exactly that. Solid pass pro. I don't think he's great at pass pro, but I think he's willing to put his body on the line and get in the way. He's more of a cut block guy than just a head-on guy. But again, I don't really care how you do it as long as you do it. And he's one of those guys that's willing to do it. So don't have a problem with him in that department either. Great junior season, I think, is the reason why he decided to come out. Had some solid years prior to this past season, but this year was outstanding for Wendell Smallwood. Everything kind of came together, and it was the perfect storm. Caught the football out of the backfield, but he ran the football very effectively. 238 carries, 1,519 yards rushing, led the Big 12 with some powerhouse rushers like Shock Linwood out at Baylor and Samaje Perine at Oklahoma. This guy was the leader in the clubhouse in rushing in the Big 12, and also to go along with those yards, 9 touchdowns, so he knows how to find pay dirt as well. So I thought it was a very productive junior season for Wendell Smallwood. His cons: not a lot of make you miss. Even though he possesses some agility, he's not making guys miss out in space, and that was a little alarming to me, because I'm saying you got the speed, You've got the agility, but you're not putting those two components together to allow you to hit the home run. A lot of doubles, the occasional triple, but there aren't a lot of home runs being hit by Wendell Smallwood because he's not making guys miss out in space. And if you don't know how to make guys miss out in space, look, plays are going to be blocked up for you to where you're going to have to make one or two defenders miss if you want to hit the home run. Your guys up front are going to take care. And at West Virginia, there were some nice holes there, okay? He had some really good lanes to exploit, and he was able to, and I talked about him hitting these holes with some bursts. He had some holes to hit where he was able to identify the cutback lane, huge hole, stick his foot in the ground, get up the field, and then there was one or two defenders. If he could make one of those guys miss, he could be off to the races, wasn't able to do so. So he's a guy that I just didn't see make a lot of guys miss, even when he would catch the football out in space. That first defender a lot of times would get him on the ground, and I just said, come on, bro, you got the speed, you got some wiggle, make some of these guys miss. He was not doing that. What is he? That's the next con. It's more of a question than it is a con. What are you? Are you a third down back? Are you a change of pace back? Are you an every down back? I look at his stature and his size, and I say probably not going to be an every down back. I just can't see that at 5'8", 210. I just don't see this guy being an every down rock toter. I just don't see that. So then the question is, are you a third down back? Am I only putting you in on third down situations? Or are you a guy that I can give a series or two to during the course of a game and allow you to touch the rock 12 to 15 times in a game as a change of pace back? What are you, Wendell Smallwood? That's the question I have for him. And we know Doug Peterson came from Kansas City, where they had a bunch of running backs, and it proved to be huge for them because when Jamal Charles went down, they had other guys that stepped in and filled that role beautifully for them. So maybe he's one of those guys that can just come in and fill a void if your lead guy goes down. Right now, I don't know what his role is in Philadelphia. And finally, his last con, arrested for tampering charges after his freshman year at West Virginia. One of his friends was involved in a murder case, and he tried to get one of the witnesses to say that he didn't know, or change his account of what happened to say that he didn't know if Wendell Smallwood's friend actually committed the murder or not. And so he was brought up on tampering charges. Luckily enough for him, his friend, and really this is taking one for the team, because if his friend doesn't step up to the plate and say, all right, man, I'm gonna plead guilty to this, Wendell Smallwood is probably going to prison. So got away with one there. Luckily his friend said, man, you don't need to go down for what I did. I'm gonna go ahead and take the fall for both of us. Even though at the end of the day, if his friend did commit the crime, it is what it is. I mean, you should be taking the fall because you did the crime, but either way, Wendell Smallwood found himself in a very sticky situation because he put himself there. Luckily enough for him, that didn't ruin his life. So some questionable decision making there. It worked out for him in the end. This is a guy that I feel like can come in and really help your football team. I actually like this selection in the 5th round, 153rd pick overall. West Virginia running back Wendell Smallwood for me is a triple. I like what he brings to the table. I think this is a guy that, even though I don't see him hitting a bunch of home runs, I think this is a guy that can stockpile a lot of yards for you, move the sticks, and really be a productive running back for you in this scheme. If this scheme looks anything like the one did in Kansas City, this guy could have a huge impact on this Eagles offense in his rookie season. You go to the 5th round again, 164th overall selection, TCU offensive lineman Big V is the selection. Normally, I'm one of those guys that I'm a stickler for getting people's names right. I'll go and I'll figure out how to say it, and I'll do my best to try to pronounce these names correctly. Everybody else is going with Big V, and normally I'm like, I'm going to be that guy to say this person's name because I can. This is one of those times where I'm like, man, I don't need to be different from everybody else. If everybody else is calling you Big V, I'm going to call you Big V. This is a hell of a first name. You want me to tell you what's fascinating here, and then we're going to get back on track, is you see his first name. I can say his last name is Vita, but you see his first name? How is it that that's your first name, but he has 2 younger brothers, and their name is Will and Kevin? What the hell just happened here? He gets gets that first name and his two brothers get Will and Kevin? What? I don't know about that. Let's jump into his breakdown. 6'6", 320 pounds. They don't call him Big V for nothing. He's a big man, okay? Good length, 34-inch arms. Again, when you get that kind of size on somebody 6'6", a lot of times you're going to get long limbs to go along with it. And this is no different here. A good short area quickness. I was surprised because I was expecting a plodding, lumbering offensive lineman that couldn't move well, especially in short, tight spaces. And I was wrong, man. This guy can actually move a little bit, especially in short areas, man. I was really impressed with his movement skills. Had a really good one-arm extension, and a lot of times you see this out of defenders. You don't see offensive linemen using this. Again, one arm is longer than two. So if you can go ahead and extend that out, you're going to keep a guy at bay. And when you got 34-inch arms, it's always great to kind of extend out. And I saw him against Baylor using that one-arm technique very impressively. Against Oklahoma, saw the same thing. Now, he doesn't use it as often as I would like him to because I feel like you keep guys at bay when you do that. You disrupt their timing. When you stick one arm out there, they're not expecting that. They're used to offensive linemen going with the two-handed approach. I'd love to see him do that a little bit more because it displaces that defensive lineman. You know, before they can even get in there and rush, boom, you catch a little punch from one arm and you extend it out there. I think it's something that he should use a little bit more because it works well for him. Anchors well. I thought he held his own versus Defoe. Who? Defoe. DeForest Buckner in that bowl game against Oregon. Now, he did have 2 holding penalties in that game, but DeForest Buckner, as we know, he's a handful. He's a load to deal with. But I thought for the duration of that game, and he saw DeForest Buckner a bunch. He saw Defoe a bunch in that game. I thought he did a hell of a job. I thought he did a bang-up job on DeForest Buckner throughout that game. And I felt like this is a guy that can hold up at the point of attack. This is a guy that can hold up and anchor down and not get blown up. And there were a couple of times where DeForest Buckner got up under him. You're talking about 2 behemoths going after it. But he was able to hold up at the end of the day, and I thought he did a really good job against Defoe in that ball game. Handles the TE game well, tackle and stunts. Guys are looping around. He does a really good job of washing down that defensive end and then coming back and catching that defensive tackle looping around. I thought he did a tremendous job, actually, of catching those TE games and not allowing those guys to set him up. So he did a really good job of coming off of one, picking up the other. Versatility. This is a guy that played both left and right tackle at TCU, both equally effective. So you get some versatility here. If he doesn't fit in one area, you stick him in the other one and you feel good about him. And if he's not a starter, guess what? You got yourself a swing tackle here in the 5th round potentially with Big V. So this is a good selection here. Let's jump into his cons. Too upright at times. And again, we're talking about a 6'6" offensive lineman. A lot of times you'll get that from these guys. Whether you're on the defensive or offensive line, when you're this big, the tendency is to stand straight up and not have any bend in your knees and not have that flexibility you need. And anytime you get straight up, you give yourself up, you give that chest up, and you allow a defender to get their hands up under your pads and jack you up and put you on skates. And sometimes you would see that. And even against Defoe, sometimes you saw that where he was standing straight up, Defoe would be a little bit down, Defoe would get up under his pads and drive him back, and then quarterback would have to retreat the pocket. So that's something that he's going to have to work on. Speed can be a problem. Now, I've watched Eric Stryker against him in the Oklahoma game, and what messed Big V up in that game was Eric Stryker beat him the first time. So it was only on 3rd downs where Eric Stryker would come off that edge. And the first time Eric Stryker came off the edge, he beat him with pure speed. Big V couldn't get his hands on him. Eric Stryker beat him around the corner, almost got to the quarterback, altered the play. So now Big V was looking for the speed. Anytime he saw Eric Stryker, he's looking for the speed. Well, Stryker came with an inside move, and Big V was not ready because he was looking for the speed. He had opened up his hips. He had already turned and committed to the speed. Well, Eric Stryker went inside. Now he was reaching, overextending, which is his last con. He started overextending and reaching because he opened up here and he was here. He's in here. He got beat. So it seemed like Eric Stryker just had his number in that game. He was beaten by Eric Stryker. Now, everybody else in that Oklahoma game, Big V was handling them with ease. But Eric Stryker gave him fits in that game, beat him around the corner, beat him inside, and he struggled with Eric Stryker because speed gives him problems. and he overcompensates for the speed, and then he gives up the inside, and he'll overextend sometimes, especially when you have a speed rusher. He's so anxious to try to get his hands on him. Instead of him waiting and bending, he'll bend at the hips, and he won't actually bend with his knees, and so he'll overextend, which will leave him out there exposed and allow guys to get by him. But this is a solid prospect here, a big guy at 6'6", 320, can do a lot for you if coached up properly. In the 5th round, 164th overall selection, TCU offensive lineman Big V is a double. I think there's a lot of potential here. I think this is a guy that can come in, and like I said, even if he's not a starter for you, this is a guy that can be a swing tackle for you. I think day one for this Eagles football team. You go to the 6th round, 196th overall selection. Auburn defensive back Blake Countess is the selection. 5'9", 184 pounds. Good athleticism and strength that translates to the field. This is a guy that tested well in his pro day. 4.49 speed at the 40 time, 36.5-inch vert. And this is a guy that threw up 21 reps of 2 1/4. Again, we're talking about a 5'9", buck 84 defensive back. So those are impressive numbers for a guy of his stature. And you actually see all of these things translate to the football field. So that's another thing. It's one thing to go and do these things and be a workout warrior. It's another thing for these things to actually be seen on the field, and you get that with Blake Countess. Very disciplined and controlled defender. That's one of the things I like about his game. It's also something else that I feel like hinders him at times as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But he's a guy that is where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there. You can count on Blake Countess to do whatever it is you need him to do. I think that's why Auburn was so comfortable with moving this guy around at different positions, because they felt like he could handle it and he would not let them down wherever they plugged him. Wherever they needed him, they put him there. He was going to deliver for them. And I think that's something that you can feel good about at the next level with Blake Countess as well. He tackles. And this guy, for a 5'9", 184-pound defender, this guy isn't afraid to tackle. In fact, he is very aggressive in tackling. 71 tackles last year. And this is a guy that will come up, he will get you down on the ground, and he's a form tackler. I love that. Again, at 5'9", 184, who you scaring? You're not coming up and you're not blasting anybody, and he's not looking to do so either. He's a guy that's looking to wrap you up, get your legs, shoot your cuffs, get you on the ground, and I didn't see him miss not a single tackle watching about 3 or 4 different games on him. So that was very impressive. Every time he came up in run support, every time the guy in front of him caught the football, he got him down on the ground or escorted him out of bounds. Ball skills, 8 interceptions in his career. 6 of them came in his sophomore season. So this is a guy that can make some plays on the football if he's in the right position. Saw him make an extraordinary play against Ole Miss where he tipped the ball up in the air and was able to find it, locate it, and pick it off. So this is a guy that can make some plays on the football. Tremendous versatility. At Auburn, they use this guy everywhere. They played him out wide at cornerback. They also used him in the nickel, but his primary position for them was safety, and I thought he did a bang-up job there as well. So this is a guy that I feel like has a lot of different things that he brings to the table, and of course special teams value as well. You move on to his cons. I don't feel like he drives on routes quick enough. Remember I talked about him being very disciplined and more of a controlled defender. Well, sometimes being a controlled defender means you're very patient, and sometimes I felt like he was a little bit too patient. Sometimes I felt like he sat in and squatted on routes, didn't drive on them fast enough. I would have loved to have seen him be a little bit more proactive because he was right there all the time. I would love to have seen him drive on some routes a little quicker. Maybe he would have been able to make some more plays, but I think that's something that he does very well in terms of just being where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. But if he could just be a little bit faster in that, I think he could make more plays on the football. His size is the next con. 5'9", 184, I think is going to restrict him to probably more of a slot or even safety at the next level. Remember, Walter Thurman III, your safety that had a career year last year, just retired at 28, and I don't know if the Eagles had wind of that when they made this selection, but this guy strikes me as a Walter Thurman III replacement if I've ever seen one. Similar stature and size, similar skill set, does a lot of the same things Walter Thurman III did in the league, being able to play over the slot and be a guy that you could put out at cornerback if need be. So playing safety as well. I think this guy is a perfect replacement for him if that's what the Eagles so choose to do. And then his final con, he had a torn ACL in 2012, and he had core surgery in 13. And core is usually, I think, of your oblique or your abs or something like that. So probably had an oblique tear, had to have surgery on that. So he's had 2 surgeries over the life of his collegiate career. That's just something to keep in the back of your mind. But he's played 2 consecutive seasons and been very effective since then. So I like this guy a lot. I like Blake Countess. I think he's a really good addition to this Eagles football team. In the 6th round, 196 pick, Auburn defensive back Blake Countess is a triple. Again, I don't give out 6th round triples very often, but this is a very impressive football player, and he's got a chip on his shoulder because he didn't get invited to the combine. He feels like he's being overlooked. He transferred from Michigan because he had already graduated and had 1 year eligibility left, goes to Auburn, plays a really good season. I think this is a guy that's playing with the chip on his shoulder that can come in and do a number of things for you defensively and help you right away. You go to the 7th round. Eagles had 3 7th round selections. 233rd overall selection. LSU defensive back Jalen Mills is the pick. 6 feet, 191 pound defensive back. He's a good athlete, 4'4", 840. Guy that can pick him up, put him down. Willing tackler at the safety position. He's not a guy that's afraid. He'll come in, he'll mix it up, he'll get in the fray, get his hands dirty. Ball skills, 6 INTs in his career. So he's a guy that can and will make some plays on the football if given the opportunity. Effective blitzer. Saw him blitz against Alabama. Was very impressed with him coming down. He was controlled. A lot of these times, guys come down, especially from the safety position. They want to get there as fast as possible. They come out of control. Quarterback gives them a little move, and they're able to elude him. He came down, was under control. Quarterback tried to go out the back door. He was able to stop, turn, pivot, track him down, sack him for about a 10-yard loss. So he can come off the edge and be an effective blitzer as well. He's got some toughness. This is a guy that could have easily sat out last season and gained another year of eligibility. He had a fractured fibula that happened in August along with some torn ankle ligaments. So this is a guy that could have just said, to hell with it. I just injured myself right before the season. I'm not going to be able to play this year. I'll come back next year and try to build up my stock. Instead, he says, to hell with that. I'm going to get ready. I'm going to come back and I'm going to play these final 6 games of the season. So that takes a level of toughness because I don't know if he was 1,000% healthy and ready to go, but he gutted it out and was able to help LSU get to a bowl game and win a bowl game. So I thought that was something that I thought got him drafted as well. I mean, it may have hurt him coming back earlier and not having a full season under his belt, but it also may have helped him get selected in the 7th round as well. Versatility, this guy can play cornerback, nickel, and safety. So again, much like Blake Countess, another one of these guys that can be very versatile and multifaceted for you, do a number of different things. We'll see if he ends up playing a cornerback or safety for the Eagles in their secondary. And cons, more urgency getting into his run fits. As a safety, I would love to see this guy because he tackles well, but it just seems like he's not as urgent getting downhill and getting into play. He's more of a guy that waits till the running back or whomever gets to the 2nd or 3rd level before he really starts to be a guy that gets involved in the play. I'd love to see him have a little bit more urgency getting into his run fits and making plays closer to the line of scrimmage. 2014, he had an arrest, 2nd-degree battery of a woman that ended up being reduced to a misdemeanor. Again, I don't know the situation, so I'm not going to sit here and play moral police. All I know is it is what it is. It says what it says. So that's something to keep your eye on. I don't know what happened in that situation, but you just don't want, and we know in this day and age, you don't want anything to do with a woman and battery, assault, any of that. That's the easiest way to get a one-way ticket out of the league. So he needs to make sure he steers clear of anything of the sort. And in 2015, I just talked about that injury that happened in August right before the season that saw him miss about the first 7 games of the season. Tore his ankle all to shreds and also had a fractured fibula. So again, had an injury that was pretty substantial, going into the 2015 season. Was able to rebound and play the final 6 games, but again, that's an injury that's very recent, so that's probably also something that scares some teams away from selecting him as well. So that's Jalen Mills in a nutshell. 7th round, 233rd overall selection. LSU defensive back Jalen Mills for me is a double. Solid prospect. I think if this guy's all the way healthy, the talent is there. The man played in the SEC, played at a relatively high level. If you can keep him out of trouble, if you can keep him healthy, this is a talented football player, no doubt about it. You go to the next 7th round pick, 240th overall. Florida defensive end Alex McAllister is the selection, 6'6", 239 pounds. This guy has ridiculous length, 36-inch vines. They're not arms, they're vines, okay? A lot of people say he's a clone of Leonard Floyd, the Georgia defensive end slash linebacker who went in the first round to the Bears. There are a lot of similarities, but Leonard Floyd is a much better, much more well-rounded football player than Alex McAllister, and he's clean off the field. Alex McAllister is not. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but there's an explosive burst off the snap that allows him to win, and he has a ridiculous bend around the edge, and so this next pro to me is the reason why this guy is even draftable. Explosive burst off the snap with a dip to match, and what that is him basically running the track. And all that is getting up the field and turning the corner. And his move of choice that allows him to turn that corner, because he wins with explosiveness right off the snap, is that dip, that bend, which you don't usually see a 6'6" guy being able to do. But much like Leonard Floyd, he's got that Gumby shape and that bend ability where he's able to dunk down. And about 4 of his sacks, and he had 6.5 sacks to lead Florida. He was a co-leader in sacks on that football team. I saw about 4 in the 4 games that I watched. I seen about 4 of his 6.5 sacks, and all 4 of them came off the same move. Speed rush up the field with a beautiful dip. And you know, offensive linemen 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". You dip down, you bend down, they can't get down there. They're looking for you here. They're not looking for you down here. And so he would dip under there, and he came up with some crucial sacks against Kentucky late in that ball game, against Vanderbilt late in that ball game. Came up with some big plays to help them put some games away. So that's a stellar move. It's a hell of a move if he can find ways. And again, I will talk about the rest of his Rolodex of moves or lack thereof a little bit later on. But if he can figure out some counter moves and some ways to set some of this stuff up, this guy could be an effective pass rusher at the next level. Cover some ground, man. I talked about long arms. He's got long legs too. This guy's just long. So when his first 3 or 4 steps, this guy's covering a massive amount of ground, which is why he beats these tackles off the edge so effectively. And then that dip really helps him win and finish it off. So he does a really good job of covering a bunch of space in a short amount of steps because of the length that this guy possesses. 12.5 career sacks in really 2 years, essentially. He didn't really play that much as a freshman. He had 6 sacks in his sophomore season, had 6.5 this year. He would have been poised to have probably a breakout senior season, but we'll talk about why that was not possible for him as we go to his cons. His frame. I just don't see this guy putting on a bunch more weight. And unlike Leonard Floyd, who was able to put on more weight after his season at Georgia was completed, I don't see Alex McAllister putting on 10 or 15 pounds and getting to 245 or 250 pounds. I just don't see this guy getting much bigger than he is. Even though he has a 6'6" frame that looks like he could stand to gain another 10 or 15 pounds, I just don't see this guy putting on that kind of weight. And because of that, he can't set the edge in the run game whatsoever. If you're going to draft this guy, which the Eagles have, you have to have a plan for him. And I think if he can do nothing but be a situational pass rusher. That's it. I don't think there's any other way you can use this guy other than a situational pass rusher at the next level, especially if he stays the size that he is. No move, Rolodex, or plan. I just don't feel like he has a plan of action when he rushes. He's just rushing. And every now and again, he'll say to himself, all right, pre-snap, I'm coming with my speed rush up the field and I'm going to dip. But he doesn't have a rush off of that. There's no counter. There's nothing else I need to look for other than that speed rush with the dip. So if I can prepare for that, I pretty much can stop Alex McAllister. There's no bull rush, there's no power, there's no speed to power, there's no inside move. Unlike Leonard Floyd, who probably has the most deadliest inside move of any player in this draft, there's none of that. There's just a speed with a dip to the outside that wins. And if you can stop that, you can stop Alex McAllister. He needs to get better at developing other ways of getting to the quarterback. Foot injury. He missed the final 4 games of his junior year, which happened to be this past season, and got suspended for the 2nd time, which ultimately got him dismissed from the Florida football team. So that takes us to our final con, character concerns. This is a guy that you look at and you say, I don't know the story behind why he got dismissed and why he was suspended the 1st or the 2nd time, nor do I care. Fact of the matter is, you got dismissed from the football team, and Florida has had a bunch of turmoil at the head coaching position, and We've had 2 different coaches in there, and he's been suspended 2 different times. It's just a problem when a guy can't stay on the field because he's injured, and it's another problem, a totally whole different issue when a guy can't stay on the field because he's suspended. They finally had enough of him. They kicked him off the team. That's why he couldn't come back for his senior season, which I think would have helped his stock tremendously. Instead, he went into the league and he put his name in for the draft because he wasn't going to be back at Florida because he was dismissed from the team. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that he was kicked off the team. I don't like that this is a guy that has had multiple run-ins with authority figures at Florida. I don't like the fact that this guy didn't have a chance to get bigger, get stronger, and refine some of his pass rushing moves at Florida. And so because of all of those things, even though this guy has some talent, some length, and I think he's a one-trick pony, in the 7th round, 240th pick, defensive end out of Florida, Alex McAllister is a single for me. And this is the kind of guy you take in the 7th round. This is the guy you take a flyer on. A guy that's highly talented, has some skills, but has some red flags and some things that you don't really like, which is why everybody else passed on him. And he played in the SEC, so there's some talent here. And he went up against some really great A high level talent because he played in the SEC. This is the kind of flyer you take on a guy, but I'm telling you right now, a lot of the signs point to this guy not being worth the headache. So we'll see what happens with Alex McAllister as we move on to the final pick in this Eagles draft. In the 7th round, 251st pick overall, Oregon linebacker Joe Walker is the selection. 6'2", 236 pounds. Better than advertised athlete, 4.56 40. Ran a lot faster than people expected. Tested well, 37.5 vertical. So you're talking about a guy that blew it up in his pro day, and everybody had to go back to the tape because they said, wow, this guy's faster than we thought. This guy jumped and was explosive. Yeah, we need to go put the tape back on, because if the tape says something else, then we're going to leave him alone. But if the tape kind of matches up with what we saw here in these numbers, maybe he's worth taking a flyer on. I think that's what got him drafted here in the 7th round. The tape did match up a bit of what they saw at the pro day. Moves well in space, has some solid zone drops. I think he's a guy you can count on and drop in his zone and be comfortable out in space. Flows well to the football. He's a guy that I think he had like 81 tackles or so this year, 70 some odd tackles the year before. He's a guy that's around the football a little bit. Scooped up a fumble, and again, when you're around the football, good things happen for you. I watched the game. I want to say it was against Georgia State, where he scoops up a fumble, takes it to the house. So yeah, this is a guy that's around the football, flows well to the football, can do some good things. He's a glue guy, most of all. His time at Oregon was spent just being a solid contributor. Not a guy that stuck out, not a name that resonated, but he was a guy that was a glue guy that held everything together, made all of the solid plays, and he was a guy that was going to take on his block, and that's the final pro. Is he's assignment oriented, okay? A glue guy, takes on blockers, and he's the guy that just holds that defense together. Again, not a name that's gonna resonate, but a guy that's just gonna do his job and be effective while on the football field. You go to his cons, and because I just said all of those things, he's just a guy, okay? You can find a Joe Walker anywhere, okay? You can probably find a better Joe Walker somewhere else. He's just a guy, and because of that, I don't know if he sticks on this roster or not. He's going to have to impress on special teams first and foremost, and he's going to probably have to make a couple of splash plays in order to make this Eagles football team. He will miss some tackles. The one that sticks out to me versus Michigan State early in the season, both of the teams are 1-0. It's a huge game. They're in the fourth quarter of a big game. They're leading at the time. I think they were trailing, but trailing by like 1 or 2. And Joe Walker has a chance to tackle the running back, I think his name is Scott, out of the backfield, and he misses the tackle. Scott breaks that tackle, gets to the end zone, about a 40-yard touchdown. If Joe Walker makes that tackle, it's about a 4-yard gain. He misses the tackle, and he ends up running into the end zone from about 40 yards out. So huge play. That was the difference in the game, because I think Michigan State ends up winning that game by like 2 or 3 points. So that missed tackle and subsequent touchdown was pretty much the difference in that ball game. And I saw him miss a few more tackles. So he's a guy that will miss some tackles. And he's a liability in man-to-man coverage. You can be as athletic as you want, but you still got to have the movement skills. I saw him against Georgia State getting freaked in man-to-man. I mean, they were breaking him off. They were doing him. All right, guys coming out of the backfield, giving him a shimmy. Joe's going that way, running back's going that way. He's lost, all in the sauce. So this is a guy that I think is a liability, even though I think he's solid in zone drops, he's a liability in man-to-man coverage. Like I said, reiterating, this is a guy. He's just a guy. So in the 7th round, 251st pick overall, Oregon linebacker Joe Walker for me is a single. You can get Joe Walkers anywhere. They're out there. He's just a guy to me. So that's the Eagles draft in a nutshell. Let's quickly run over their selections and the scores attached with them. In the 1st round, quarterback Carson Wentz out of North Dakota State is, of course, a home run. 3rd round, Isaac Seumalo, Oregon State offensive lineman, is a double. 5th round, West Virginia running backs Wendell Smallwood is a triple. 5th round, Big V, offensive lineman out of TCU, he's a double. 6th round, DB out of Auburn, Blake Countess is a triple. 7th round, LSU defensive back Jalen Mills is a double. 7th round, Alex McAllister as well as Joe Walker, both 7th-round selections, are both singles to round out this Eagles draft. You add up their totals, you got a home run and you got 2 triples. Then you have 3 doubles, which nets you a doubles bonus, and then 2 singles to round out your draft. You add that up, you get a 20, divide by the number of picks, which is 8, and it's a 2.5 draft for the Eagles. It's a double. This was a solid draft until you got to the end, and again, you got 3 7th-round picks. That's what you can expect, a couple of singles being sprinkled in there, and that's what happened to the Eagles. So, solid draft for the Eagles, but if Carson Wentz works out, this is an excellent draft, and that's really what you're looking at here. I think you got some solid guys to put in front of him or whomever is playing quarterback in Seumalo and Big V. I think Blake Countess could be a perfect replacement for Walter Thurman III, who just retired. And Wendell Smallwood's going to come in and contribute, I think, at the running back position right away. So this is a solid draft. And I think Jalen Mills could be a sleeper pick for you in the 7th round. We'll see what happens there. But that's the Philadelphia Eagles 2016 NFL Draft. That happens in the National Football League, whether big or small. Cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break that in. And now, National Football League. Who's next? There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at In The Lab Room, or you can like the Facebook page at In The Lab Room. That's In The Lab Room on Facebook and at In The Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.